Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. It's what, Monday, January 14th. I should have this down by now. This is like the third time I've gone onto YouTube today. 2019. How are you guys doing? This is a reminder before we get started to everyone who's watching on Periscope. If you want to participate via comments and whatnot, you're going to have to pop on over to YouTube because Restream, which is what I'm doing this through, I'm not getting any of the comments coming through the Restream chat anymore, but their servers are still better than either YouTube's or Periscope, so therefore we do it through them. All right. Hello to everyone. I hope everybody's having a great evening. Let's make sure the chat's actually working as it comes through YouTube, because I'm not even seeing anything through Restream's chat at this. There they are. Okay, great. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Before we get started, just kind of noodling time here for a minute or two before we get started talking about what we're going to talk about tonight. I've got a couple of videos up I just did today discussing, first, some of the ramifications surrounding Brexit, which the big vote comes down tomorrow evening, British time, 7 o'clock, I think, British time. Or London time, or Greenwich Mean Time, whatever time. I guess they're Greenwich Mean Time. As to whether or not Theresa May's deal is going to fall flat or not, which everybody is expecting it to fail by a couple hundred points. And then, but the bigger news of the day, and as far as big as all the machinations around Brexit are, there's a bigger piece of news today, and I would not normally go back to YouTube twice in a single day, but this one was big. This one was important, and I think it ultimately changes everything. And we're going to try and talk through some of the issues surrounding Russia's announcement that they are going to diversify $10 billion of their reserves, their foreign exchange reserves, official foreign exchange reserves, into Bitcoin. Well, Edwin Smith, I just put this shirt on this morning, so why would I change it? So here's the gig. Like I said, as big as Brexit, as the stuff surrounding Brexit is, the Russians announcing that they're going to move into Bitcoin in an official way. There's so much to this. I haven't even had a chance to really process it all, but it was important to get on this story immediately. So let's start with the basics. Why would they do this? Well, they would do it because they're trying to get around U.S. sanctions. They're trying to figure out ways to ensure, excuse me while I grab my coffee, to ensure that they have the ability to perform international transactions if the United States comes down even harder on everybody, ultimately, to do business with them, and says, hey, look, if you do business with the Russians, we're going to sanction you. Because that's what's coming next. And there's a part of me that still believes that Trump doesn't actually believe in all this stuff. And that part of this, that a lot of this is coming out of minutia, and a lot of this is coming from the banking sector. A lot of this is coming from forces well beyond his control, because Congress gave the Treasury Department the ability to levy sanctions. And the president really has his hands tied in this. Now, that may just be wishful thinking on my part. It may just be my residual Trump derangements or reverse Trump derangement syndrome, I guess. I don't know. But the bigger issues is that this legitimizes for Russian banks the ability to do business cross-border with whomever they want, or who's ever willing to do business with them in a way that they didn't have before. It's one thing to have your own payment system a la SWIFT, your own electronic messaging system a la SWIFT. It's another thing to just dispense with all those pleasantries and just go straight to cryptocurrencies. Because everybody who's in cryptocurrencies in any significant way understands that the cost of transactions is minuscule. And It's minuscule, relatively speaking. Sure, when the Bitcoin blockchain was under sincere stress in late 2017, transaction fees were astronomical. They went nuts, but it was all basic. It was all time based. If you didn't care that the rate at which your transaction cleared and it was going to take a few hours or even a few days, well, you paid a couple of cents, a couple of pennies. And if you wanted it cleared in 20 minutes, it was going to cost you $30. Now, I'm not crazy about those numbers, but here's the thing. It doesn't really matter. Because if Bitcoin can't handle that traffic, Litecoin can. Litecoin can't handle it. Zcash can. There's dozens of these out there. And they're all different blockchains. And they're all different settlement systems. But they all wind up being effectively the same thing. And once a bank sets itself up to accept one cryptocurrency, it's going to set itself up to accept all of them. Because it's not that hard. Or at least not all of them, but certainly a smattering of them. So what's truly important here is to say that the Russians are saying, look, you feckless European useless bastards. You can't set up a special purpose vehicle. You can't set up a special bank to do business, to clear Iranian oil transactions, or, to pay our contractors to finish building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Well, we have a method for that. We're going to take care of it. We're going to ensure that it happens. Okay? And moreover, this gives every European country that wants to defy Brussels over sanctions the ability to do so. You want to do business with Crimea? Do business in Bitcoin. You can do business with the Russian bank in Bitcoin directly, or with the Russian central bank directly, who can then deal with the Crimean bank and convert everything into rubles or dollars or whatever they need. No problem. Because at the end of the day, as long as there's a mechanism by which to get the money into the country, then moving it around internally is irrelevant. So, and when you start to really think about this, and you go back to last summer, because Stoyanovich just brought up a great point, which is something I was kind of touched on earlier today. Go back to the story over the summer about Danske Bank. Biggest bank in Denmark, correct? Huge bank. I think I finally got that right. Danske is Danish. Danish is Denmark, not Holland. Yeah, not. I always get all those Holland, Netherlands, Denmark, crazy. So Danske Bank, biggest, one of the oldest banks in Europe, nearly brought down to completely by an initial complaint from Bill Browder over money laundering through its Estonian branch in order to scare all the other European banks into not doing business in Russia anymore. So if you think about what that was all about, it wasn't about taking Danske down for doing business, doing business that was contra to anti-money laundering, AML and KYC laws. It had nothing to do with that. Nothing at all. It had everything to do with scaring the banks and scaring businesses into doing any business with Russia whatsoever across the European Union in order to try and set up, most likely, a challenge to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. The problem is that Nord Stream 2 is being built every day. And Germany is not going to cave on this. The Germans aren't going to have Gazprom or the Nord Stream 2 JV build the pipeline all the way to the German territorial waters and then stop because the United States told them not to finish it. Are you fucking kidding me? This is a $10 billion project. This is a $10 billion project that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars to Germany in GDP. So when I was thinking about the Danske Bank thing last year and trying to really connect some of the dots. And I thought, okay, it's one thing to go after them because of money laundering and there was the Russian connection, but now really think it through And this announcement by the Russians today, along with their own SWIFT system, obviously, gives you the fuller picture of what the Russians always had in mind. They've given the European Union all the time in the world to show some backbone and to be partners with them. They haven't done it. So what happened, Ryu? This is the title of the talk tonight. The Russians announced that they were going to be diversifying $10 billion of their reserves into Bitcoin. And right now, Bitcoin is only worth $63 billion. So the Russians are talking about adding 16% of the current Bitcoin float, if possible, to their reserves at current prices. Now, do you really think that they're going to be able to get $10 billion worth without moving the price? I don't. Volumes in Bitcoin right now are minuscule. And the Russians don't really particularly care about moving the price in gold in order to pick up gold. Right? So I don't really think that they're going to care here. So it's all fascinating. But this also gives you another angle on how they can skirt around, how Iran can skirt around sanctions, how Turkey could skirt around any potential sanctions. I mean, Trump's out there making an ass out of himself, as always, saying, "Oh, Turkey, if you hurt the Kurds, I'm going to rain financial ruin upon you." Yeah, dude, you did that last summer. It didn't work. That could be, I mean, yeah, okay, so Stoyanovich brings up the Danske is a Danish bank that was meant to pressure Denmark not to grant the Nord Stream 2 passage. That could be the tie-in, but here's the thing. Denmark was never in a position to stop Nord Stream 2 just to make it a little bit more expensive. I mean, and the IRR on Nord Stream 2 is not going to be materially affected over the course of its lifetime by having to spend an extra $10 million or $15 million going around Denmark. Right? Just not an issue. Especially at the rate at which Gazprom right now is printing fucking money. Okay? And it's no secret that I've got Gazprom in my portfolio. I talk about it all the time. I watch the stock pretty closely. I read every earnings report. I know what their debt payoff profile looks like and what currencies it looks like. Okay, I know all this stuff. And I can tell you that right now, Gazprom is printing money hand over fist. They have a $29 billion CapEx budget for 2019 alone, because they're building 3 major pipelines all at the same time. And power generating stations. And other transmission lines. And. I mean, Gazprom is an extra couple $100 million. Even if it costs them a couple $100 extra million to finish Nord Stream 2 to go around Denmark, who cares? And if Russia required payment in crypto for one of their pipes, well, then it wouldn't be losing anything on the Bitcoin reserves anyway. I'm not even worried at this point that they'd be losing money on their reserves. I don't think they care. Green Penguin, I really don't think they care. They understand that reserve assets are volatile in nature. What's important is that they have diversification across their reserves, in effect hedging themselves against everything else. Now, we're all sitting here, you guys follow me, and I know for the most part y'all would agree with me about the timing and the order of operations. I still feel there's going to be a fairly large move up in the dollar. I don't know when, but it's coming. I think it's basing right now. There may be a small, false move down to like 92 or 93 on the dollar index, but nothing significant. Because once Europe starts to go, the whole thing is going to explode to the upside. And that's going to hurt the Russians. That's going to hurt the value of their reserves. There's no question about that. right? But they're diversified across asset classes. And if we get into a crisis situation and, dollar liquidity dries up, yeah, you could see the Russians take a 15 or 20% hit on their foreign exchange reserves. It's not even worrisome. And of course, Moody's and Standard & Poor's and Fitch will all go, "Oh my God, it's the end of the world," and they won't raise their bonds above junk level. The Russian bonds trading at near junk level is, or just barely investment grade, is the biggest joke in the world. It's unbelievable. They have probably the best fiscal position of any country in the world right now. Better than Switzerland, better than Germany, better than France, better than the United States, better than the UK, better than Japan, better than China, better than all of them. And yet, they trade at nearly junk level. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, yes, Ryu, I called it the petrodollar receiving the death of 1,000 cuts. I use that exact phrase to describe the petrodollar in a forum with Jim Sinclair back in 2012. I brought it up. We talked about it. I said, don't you think that this is what's happening? Every day, another $75 million a day here, another $50 million a day there, another $100 million a day there. Eventually, it adds up its real money in the oil markets. Will U.S. states start converting dollars into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies? No, they won't. But some of them will start taking them to pay off debts. The American financial cancer of corruption is everywhere. There are a couple of states that have passed, or at least they had bills in their houses as on the floor to accept cryptocurrencies for payment for like services and taxes and whatnot. It's not really that terribly difficult to do. But and the other thing is funny. The other interesting part about this is that the Russians made this announcement after Bitcoin pushed all the way down to $3,600. They didn't do this 6 months ago. They waited until Wall Street pushed the price of Bitcoin down well below the level where a lot of the miners are profitable, where the industry is going through a sincere contraction. Why do you think they're going to do that? Because the Russians can produce Bitcoins at the best rates in the world, because they have the lowest true cost of energy and the lowest true cost of electricity in the entire world. Go back to Russian miner coin from last year. So, what roles do you see the metals playing in all this? I see the metals going great guns. I have said this forever. Well, could they go down before they go up? Sure. It's possible. It's very possible. But I think but it's interesting. We were talking about this privately this afternoon, and I actually was talking about this, and I made the mistake. I was responded to somebody who thought Bitcoin could possibly drop down into thousands. I thought he meant gold, and I started responding, talking about gold. I think it's really funny, actually, that what we're starting to see is the possibility here where the Chinese and the Russians both get on the other side of the trade in gold. For years, and during the gold bull market, the gold bear market, China was on the bear side of the trade. One, they knew the trend was bearish, and two, they were on the bear side of the trade in order to scoop up as much gold as possible at as cheap a rate as possible. Not dumb. They're going to play along with Wall Street. If everybody's going to sell gold with impunity, to make the central banks look impervious, the Chinese are going to go along with this. They're not stupid. Okay. They're very, very smart about how they handle this stuff. So they and the Russians have been going ballistic buying gold. But now that you have the petro yuan contract convertible into gold, and it's obvious at this point that the Russians are converting a lot of the oil they sell in Shanghai, get paid in yuan, convert to gold, and send back to Russia. It's very obvious that that's what's happening. It's part of what's going on here. It doesn't make any sense for them or for the Chinese to allow the price of gold to drop precipitously. You take a 25 or 30% haircut on the price of gold at this point, that would be bad, right? Because so they're not going to let that happen per se. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if their trade is high enough and the volumes on the Shanghai exchange are high enough, that's actually going to continue to keep a bid under the price of gold, and therefore, in a sense, also somewhat under the price of oil, but not really. So there it is. Okay, so let's grab some of your comments. So Stoyanovich, Salvini is talking about forming a counterpole to Paris/Berlin. Then there's Macron talking about tightening and fully integrating France and Germany. Desperation, absolutely. Absolutely, they're just on autopilot right now. They're just saying we are invincible. The EU is inevitable. The Brits can't leave. Salvini is full of shit. This is what we're going to do. Does not matter, because they are pulling. Because if they were to ever stop for 20 seconds and show any kind of worry about the viability of the EU publicly, the whole thing will collapse overnight. The ECB there would be such a massive run against the ECB, it would be unfucking believable. You'd wake up one morning and the euro would be $1.03. They can't do it. They have to keep pushing forward. And because both Macron now and Merkel are both lame ducks, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to do as much damage as they possibly can on their way out the door. How long do you think the Fed can keep buying U.S. bonds? Because we know they ain't got enough, and they're buying. They're not buying. Go look at their balance sheet. They're not buying. Ryu. They're selling. They're selling. Now, ask how much. Now, no, actually, right now, U.S. bonds are. I hate to say this, dude, but with I don't even know how many trillions of dollars. Okay, I know that. At one point, the number peaked at around $10 trillion worth of European debt was trading at negative yields. I don't know what that number is today. They won't publish it anymore. They used to publish it on a regular basis. They haven't published it recently. And I haven't done, and I'm not going to sit there and sift through central bank balance sheets to fucking figure it out. I don't care. I just know that it's a fucking lot. When you have that much debt trading at negative yields and you have us at positive yields, I got news for you. The Fed does not need to buy our bonds. They don't need to do QE. It's Europe that needs to do QE in order to maintain this fiction that their bond markets are stable. They don't have a bond market in Europe. The ECB is the bond market. I wonder what the true tonnage of the Chinese and Chinese and Russian gold reserves are. You and me both, dude. I can tell you right now that the Russians saying they have 2,000 or 2,300 tons of gold is nonsense. They've got that much in the fucking Kremlin alone. The Chinese have a lot more than the 1,500 or 1,800 tons that they say they are. And Russia is one of the biggest producers of gold in the world. They are now buying at a rate that outstrips their domestic production. And therefore, the difference has to be made up on the Shanghai exchange. And that's part of what's putting support underneath the price of gold. I think Mexico if Mexico isn't the biggest producer of silver in the world, it's either one or two. It's an amazing place to mine for silver. I have no qualms about recommending silver companies whose primary assets are in Mexico. Very favorable laws. Mexico to silver is like Nevada is for gold. Will a no deal Brexit happen? Flip a coin, dude. I don't know. I can tell you that everything is pointing towards a fight to the finish. And the most likely outcome at this point is a no deal Brexit, because nothing else actually makes any sense. The real question is whether they can push it off to July without there being a revolt within Britain and then try and somehow push for a second referendum that doesn't cause an immediate upswell of yellow vests all over Britain. Yeah, I think Mexico is the biggest silver producer. I'm almost positive of it. If it's not them, then it's Australia, but I think it's Mexico. Chile produces a lot of gold and silver as well. No, Chile is really sorry. Chile is not the biggest anywhere close. Chile is a huge copper producer. Like sincere. Like a lot of the world's copper comes out of Chile. Peru is going to be a major Peru and Uruguay and others in South America, all through there, going to be enormous copper plays into the near future. Has gold or silver any applications outside of financial? Gold, really no. Silver, yes. Silver is becoming a more and more industrial metal as time goes along. It just is. There's so many uses for silver. It's not funny. There's so many good uses for silver, but its industrial use and its industrial use cases always expand during bear markets when people are trying to figure out what to use this shit for. And oh my God, silver's $14. Well, we can use it to line the armpits of our shirts so that they kills bacteria because it's an amazing antibacterial. Or we can use it for these things, contacts and cell phones and all sorts of shit. The whole world doesn't run without silver as an industrial metal at this point. It's used as contacts in computers, but yeah, somewhat. And very low purity, yes. And moreover, it's usually just at the printed circuit boards, but not when it's expensive. It was, like gold-plated friggin' monster cables and stuff back in the 90s. Yeah, when gold was $1,300 an ounce or $300 an ounce, yeah. And the shit was just laying on the ground. You might as well do something with it. You got to come up with something for it. But the minute it gets expensive, all that dries right up. So. The huge reserves of rare earth metals the Japanese found, that was an old story, unless it's a new one. There's a huge offshore deposit of heavy rare earths off the shores of Okinawa. They found that back in 2012. There's a bigger, yeah, okay, Ryu, but how big of an industry is spacesuits? Not enough to matter. It's really just not enough to matter, and it's also foil. Remember, gold is immensely malleable, and you only need one or two atoms thick to do what you need to do in those applications. So it's really not. It's not a lot. It's expensive, relatively speaking, because it is gold after all, but it's not a lot. It's not a very big. It's just not a big industry. We're talking about like real industry, right? We're talking about like cell phones, the contacts and keyboards and cell phones and all manner of things. There's a lot of silver in your cell phone. Oh, by the way. Silver in your keyboard. Oh, by the way. And it's now at non-recoverable levels, especially $14 an ounce. Who the hell's gonna heat bleach a fucking landfill for all the silver that's in the keyboards that we've thrown away? No one. It's non-recoverable now. So HREs are very important. Heavy rare earths are the big ones. The light rare earths aren't interesting, and the heavy ones are the even numbered ones. So when you're looking at the F block, chemist here, when you're looking at the F block, the actinides and the lanthanides, the lanthanides and the actinides, the lanthanides we're talking about here, all the lanthanides. So it goes light, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, all the way out, all 14 of them. It's the even numbered ones that are the ones everybody wants. Problem, of course, is extraction with rare earths. Rare earths are hard to extract, and it's hard to differentiate and fractionate between the heavies and the lights. That's the problem with them, because there's just not a lot of differentiation between their ionic character, and therefore it's hard to do kind of classic chromatographic separation with them, right? It's just hard to do separations with them because, praseodymium and hafnium, They act very, very similar to one another. It's very difficult to extract individual ones. It's going to be Bitcoin, Rusty. Not going to be Bitcoin Gold, not going to be Bitcoin Cash. It'll be Bitcoin. It'll be Bitcoin because Bitcoin has the mempool. It has the hash rate. And that's its greatest strength. I know Enrique, I know Edwin, that that everybody is working on better technology for extracting rare earths. I know that. It's inevitable. They're so important. It's the free market. When people respond to incentives, when there's an increase in demand on something and the price goes up, then that actually is what sends the signals to the market that we need to invest in better ways to produce that thing that's so expensive now in order to bring the price down, because that's what we do, right? And so that's what truly drives innovation. Innovation is driven by necessity and high prices. High prices create the incentive to invest in greater production, and then we get the economies of scale and new technology to improve process improvement, and. So I should start Goatcoin. I thought about it a long time ago. I'm not going to. If I did, I'd do it as a smart media token off of Steam, but I don't see that happening. So but when we really get down to, yeah, I mean, oil, doesn't matter what it is. Every technology works that way. Computers, everything. So when these people sit here and tell us that we need the government to do X, Y, and Z, no, bullshit, we don't. Well, you got the libertarians are out there volunteering to clean up the national parks. The very people, because the national parks, the park rangers aren't there. So you can go to the national parks for free. The parks aren't closed. They're open. There's nobody there to stop you going into them. There's just no park rangers. There's just nobody to collect the $35 a day fee. So you can go to Yellowstone for free. Problem is, there's nobody to clean up after you. But all the people who run the lodges and run the resorts and run, and whose business and whose lives are dependent upon Yellowstone are now going, okay, fine, we'll just do it because we don't want our businesses to collapse. So now they're incentivized to go in and make sure that the park is cleaned. There's an industry. Yellowstone is an industry, and the government being there is only offloading the costs of those industry onto the back of the taxpayer. Parks should be privatized at that point. What the hell do we need the government there for? So what does the Russian move mean to the IMF plans? Thank you, Soyanovich, for getting me back on track. The IMF wants to move to a universal currency, which the EU will be in control of. I'm assuming the EU has the arrangement. No, EU owns the IMF. I'm not convinced of that. I think the IMF is, at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters as to who really owns the IMF, but the IMF exists at this point as the ultimate backstop in order to introduce a world reserve currency, and that's what they want to do. And that's what the plan is. Jim Rickards has been telling us what the plan is for years because the man is a spook, or at least mostly spook, right? He knows enough, and he knows enough real people in the real know to know what the plan is, right? And that plan is that when the next crisis hits, and it's bigger than the central banks, and they've already told everybody they've already told them told us all the game plan. They've already said in public the next crisis, the central banks are not prepared for even the next recession, no less the next crisis. This has been said twice now by two senior IMF officials, one, the assistant managing director, David Lipton, and somebody else a month before. So the IMF is already ready for Europe to explode and for the euro to crash and for the next crisis to occur. And they stand by ready with a crypto version of the SDR. That's what they want to put forward. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep this thing together as long as possible until they're ready with a crypto version of the SDR. So that now they can go and they can remove cash from everybody's wallets so that there will be 100% tax compliance, and they'll be able to unperson you if you engage in wrongthink, and they'll have perfect control over your business, over your thought, over your mind, over your body, over your capital, and everything else. That's what they want. The Russians just said, fuck that. That's the biggest thing about this, as I said this afternoon. The biggest thing about the Russians saying, no, we'll just use Bitcoin, is that's a big fuck you to the IMF, to the EU, to Soros, and the rest of them. It's like, no, fuck you, Browder. Fuck you, Edmund Safra, even though you're dead 20 years. Fuck you, all you people. Fuck you, Jamie Dimon, and the rest of you fucking vultures. Fuck you, we're not doing this. Fuck you, that's not going to happen. Fuck you, you're not going to subjugate Russia through a global cryptocurrency. Fuck you. We'll just use Bitcoin. Do they have the guts to pull the trigger on the SDR? When the financial crisis happens, they won't have a choice. Because if confidence in the central banks collapses, which is what's going to occur when the next crisis occurs, the central banks will not be able to contain it. We will have to have somebody else right in to save the day. It always works out this way. That's their plan. What drives these control freaks? Power. What drives these control freaks? They're fucking psychopaths. So, do they have the guts to pull it off the FCR? Absolutely. That's what they plan on. Here's the gig. And this is the funny part about this. Here's the gig. And I'm going to remind everybody, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Go, if you haven't read it, it's like 65 pages long. If you haven't read Murray Rothbard's great little pamphlet, What Has Government Done to Our Money? You should. Because he, in a very short order, gives you the history of money, gives you then the history of Bretton Woods, the failure of the London gold pool, and the close of the Nixon's closing of the gold window. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. According to Rothbard, we went through 4 monetary systems in 3 years. Bretton Woods failed, then the London gold pool, then that failed, then there was another, and then there was the mixed gold reserve standard, and then finally Nixon closed the gold window, and we went to competitive devaluations, otherwise known as Milton Friedman's nightmare. The same thing's going to happen this time. There's going to be 2 or 3 monetary systems. We have a current one. Actually, the current one broke in 2008. Now we have the monetary system maintained by central banks. There's no free market in government bonds. There's no free market in interest rates. There's no free market in anything. Right? There's nothing, even the illusion of a free market in any of these things. Central banks are in control. When the central banks fail, then there's going to have to be the world central bank will have to take over. Right now, we have the coordinated central bank monetary system. Then we will have the IMF-run central monetary system. That will be as metastable, if not more metastable or unstable than the current one. The IMF becomes a single point of failure. After the IMF, nothing there. Then what? When that fails, because you haven't removed the moral hazard, you haven't removed all of the perverse incentives that created the crisis in the first place that you've responded to by kicking the can down the road every fucking 10 years to maintain your own fucking power. So what happens after that? What happens after that? That's when we get to something new. And to be honest with you, part of me, this is where I listen to Martin Armstrong sometimes and I'm like, dude, can you not see what's coming next? He's so caught up with the idea that these people have all the freaking power that he can't see that they're going to lose it all in this next wave. And everything will change. And the nature of these assets will change. And the nature of money is going to change. Because we finally have a technology that allows us to print monetary units without a human agent. It's a very important moment in time. We haven't figured out what to do with this technology yet, but it's here. And once it's here, the genie can't be put back in the bottle. So this is where I am. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to like catch up on my on the comments. I'm going to get to them in just a second. So this is the this is the true importance of what Putin announced today, or what one of Putin's underlings announced today, which is that he's not going along with that. He's not going to be frog marched into the IMF. So yeah, Putin just did the two-handed middle finger thing. It was beautiful. The irony of Russia being the ones that are going to deliver us some form of financial freedom. It is absolutely the funniest freaking thing I've ever heard. But when you stop to look at Vladimir Putin with an unbiased eye, you see a man that governs like a paleoconservative. I mean, it's not hard. And then once you do that, once you realize that, and then once you also realize that the man's freaking smarter than everybody else, and a measure of how smart a man is the quality of the staff he has around him. If Trump's so fucking smart, why does he have a bunch of fucking mental midgets around him? Putin has the top diplomat in the world. Putin's staff is amazing. Shoigu, Lavrov, even his press secretary, Peskov. Silyanov is far smarter than the average finance minister. So at the end of the day, yeah, I think that what we're seeing now is this rise of populism, nationalism, whatever you want to call it, / yellow vests, to quote Stoyanovich. Now, they're putting untold pressure on the powers that be to push too early for that which nobody wants. And it's going to end badly. And it's going to end up with people getting hung, metaphorically speaking. I don't know who Edgar Cayce is, but he's a very smart man. Edgar Cayce said, according to CubeDog, Russia would be a light to the world when darkness enveloped the rest. I think that that's where we're headed. And it's sad for me to say that, because, you know, I didn't grow up with that idea. I didn't grow up this harsh a critic of my country. But the true measure of patriotism is being able to look your country in the eye and go, you've gone wrong, babe. It's time to do something about it. And for that reason and that reason alone, I give Donald Trump a lot of credit. It's too bad he doesn't have the answers. I wish he did. Communism proves centralization doesn't work. The United States proves that centralization doesn't work. We're more decentralized than the USSR was, but soon to be not by much. What makes the West think they are smarter? I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot cattle prod. I'm just not doing it. And there's a number of reasons why. These people would rather destroy the world than give up their power. They're that sick. Well, they're going to at least threaten that. Certainly the neocons feel that way. Is it time to start learning to speak Russian? I thought that about 3 years ago. Unfortunately, I'm too fucking lazy to learn it. And I started learning Russian when I was in college. So, you know, I speak the tiniest bit of Russian, right? Like really, really, really bad. Like, I know my way around the basic phrase book, but not much. If Putin is moving into Bitcoin, then something big is going to happen relatively soon. Dude, not 5 to 10 year lifespan, year span. 15 to 20 months. Every smart normie I talk to, according to Green Penguin, believes that the government can solve his problems. Well, they're going to get a comeuppance in a real short order, because they have been brought up in this idea that that's what government's there to do, is to pool capital and pool ideas and bring the best and the brightest people together and have them come up with data, and then data will tell them what to do. They believe in philosopher kings. And they believe if you give the world over to the smartest people in the room, that the smartest people in the room will come up with the right answers, because, well, obviously they'll come up with the right answers. They're smart, right? Do I think crypto has killed silver and gold for potential for general use? I think the move away from gold and silver as mediums of exchange is a historical fact, and was an historical necessity because of their lack of fungibility and their lack of of ability to accurately price the comparisons between objects in what amounts to a very sophisticated division of labor. So that was an historical inevitability. There was no reason to take it away as no longer being a reserve asset, or basing our dollar system on that. But that being said, with crypto, there's the possibility of gold and silver becoming monetized directly again. I still feel that Bitcoin will wind up being a crypto reserve asset. And yes, Maria Zakharova is freaking hot, and she is smart. God, that woman can cut a rug. Let's see. History has shown that government always creates more problems and fucks everything up. It's by definition. Every intervention in the marketplace by government, no matter what it is, will necessitate a larger intervention down the road. Always. It's a verity. It might as well be a law. You could probably tie it to the second law of thermodynamics if I really wanted to. If they want to see how government can help you, then they should go look at RT coverage of French protests and how brutal the cops are towards people who want decency. I'm buying Russian vodka stocks at this point. Tokenized silver and gold, everything. I expect a lot of that to happen. I mean, their coins like Quintric and others are really interesting. They really are. But again, the problem with gold and silver, like everything else, is the vaulting stuff, right? You have to, if you're going to build a cryptocurrency based on gold reserves, then your counterparty risk is in who owns the vault, and is there any gold there? And that's a real issue. It always has been, it always will be. Maria Zakharova is the spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry. She's amazing. And yeah, she's amazing. Fiat money, I think, is fundamentally evil. And the reason why I think it's fundamentally evil, Frederick Strauss, is because it is costless. It carries no opportunity cost in its creation, and therefore it is in itself corrupt. Because when something is created out of thin air for nothing, and someone has the incentive to create more of those things, then that's theft. And theft, as far as I'm concerned, is immoral. And so fiat, not just printing more units of something, but even worse, fiat that's based on debt, is especially evil. Rusty Enrico, I think QAnon is a political horoscope, and I think it's been a CIA psyop almost from day one. And I've said so. if you want an idea of what I think about Q, I wrote an article about QAnon when Lee Stranahan and I were going after it really hard back in, I don't know, August or something like that. And this is what I think. And I think QAnon is a standalone complex. Now I'm going to get kind of high concept for you now. I think QAnon, at best, is a standalone complex. And what I mean by that is that it is a copycat without an original. That it is the idea that we want to see a plan. We want to believe there's an active agent working for our survival, and that's the wrong word, salvation here in the United States, to support Donald Trump and go forward. I think QAnon is Trump derangement syndrome from a positive perspective. And so we all have done unbelievable amounts of research that we would have never done and have created a body of information that then jackasses on 4chan could distill into cryptic messages that look like they are real. QAnon is the laughing man. If you've seen Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I absolutely recommend that you watch it. I geek out here for the next 8 minutes. Standalone Complex, Season 1. Season 2 is also really good. But Season 1 of Standalone Complex is one of the best TV shows ever made. Bar none, period. Because of what it says, what it points to, and what it says about society and how the mass delusions, how societal desires translate into action. And I can't recommend it highly enough. It is absolutely one of my favorite things of all time. It's not on Netflix. You're going to have to, at this point, standalone complexes only, all of the Ghost in the Shell stuff is only available. You have to buy them at this point, or the Pirate Bay. And even then, it's hard to get a hold of a good copy on the Pirate Bay because the Touchcoma shorts that go after each episode, you can't find them anymore either. So I'm not sure. I don't know where my DVDs are, actually, of Season 1, which really bothers me, actually. I don't have them anymore. I lent them to somebody and I don't have them. I don't know where they are. And I'm actually, I got really, because I wanted to rewatch them recently. And the whole storyline with the Touchcomas is really important, but it happens as shorts that have to happen after every episode. Can I post pictures of the baby goats? I took pictures and video this afternoon. I just haven't posted them. But yeah, I will. I'm going to do something with them. Yeah, it's Ghost in the Shell standalone complex Season 1, worth buying if you can find a copy of it. If you can find, and absolutely, obviously, get the English cast version. The voice acting over the Japanese animation is phenomenal. Mary McGlynn as Motoko she's amazing. And my wife hates anime. She loves standalone complex. My wife fucking hates anime in all its forms. She loves standalone complex. Why? Because it's an unbelievable freaking story. So I absolutely recommend it. I wrote an article about it years ago. I should probably put it in the liner notes to this thing. If you guys haven't watched it before, it's not easy. It's a show so complicated that they even have like a recap episode halfway through. It's that complicated. You will see there are standalone episodes, and then there are quote unquote complex episodes, which are the ones that deal with the entire storyline. It's kind of like The Prisoner, where there was the 7 or 8 episodes of The Prisoner that were the main storyline, and then there were a couple of filler individual episodes like in between. Same kind of concept, same kind of structure. So over 23 episodes. But even those standalone episodes are incredibly important to understand because they introduce technology and ideas and character points that are absolutely germane to the entire story. So I have never watched Cowboy Bebop, believe it or not. And I know I should. And for some reason I haven't watched it. And there's only certain animes that I know I need to watch. And Cowboy Bebop is one I haven't gotten around to yet. It's one of the ones I have to. So I've watched every Ghost in the Shell standalone, every anime that they produce, from the movies to all of Standalone Complex seasons 1, 2, and Solid State Society, and even all the new ones, the reboot, which were also very good and interesting. But I would not but I wouldn't put it in the same class as Standalone Complex. Standalone Complex is like one of those series like The Prisoner and Babylon 5 and one that just stand head and shoulders way above everything else. It's a touchstone and a kind of a monumental achievement in episodic television. I did not see the live action movie with Scarlett Johansson. I haven't watched it. It's the only thing I haven't watched. I've watched all the cartoons or all the animes. The original movie is really interesting. The second movie I think is actually better, Innocence. Go from there. So yeah, I know. Shame on me that I haven't watched Cowboy Bebop. Sorry, User 13. I'll get around to it. So there you go. It's now that you guys are much more politically aware than you were when it came out, it'll be more relevant to you. See, I've been this kind of political radical for more than 20 years now. It just came out. This is just my coming out party these last couple of years. So when I watched Standalone Complex the first time, yeah, early on I was like, okay, this is whatever. And then all of a sudden it really started to hit me. And then they closed the fucking, then they squared the circle and closed the trap as to what they were pulling off in those last 3 or 4. And you're like, I literally sat there going, holy fucking sheep shit. And it took me years, multiple watches and whatnot to truly, and I still don't get it all. It's that deep. It's really well done. Okay. All right. 57 minutes. We got anything else? Andreas, what I'll say is this. If that story about Russia buying $10 billion worth of Bitcoin is true, which to me, I don't doubt it, that they're going to buy Bitcoin, it changes everything. Anything else? Yeah, Rocket Man. Happy trip around the Sunday. Who says you don't get out anymore? It's my standard line. Nope. We're good. No other questions? Well, this has been fun. This has been interesting. Well, it's been real. It's been fun. Ain't been real fun. Sorry. No, it has actually been a blast. You guys take care. Friday night, 8:30, as always. I'll probably do something between now and then on YouTube. So in my mind, if we're correct, the Russians could be easily saving the world here in their own unique and inimitable way. You guys take care. You be good. Keep your stick on the ice.